Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, dated 3rd February 2026. Today again we will be discussing some important topics that has appeared in today's The Hindu and the Indian Express newspapers which are relevant for your examination. In the initial two topics, we have included two mains practice questions which will be useful for your mains examination. In the analysis section, in our first topic, we'll try to understand the implications of recently announced India-US deal involving a reduction in tariffs. After that, in our second topic, we'll examine the recommendations of 16th Finance Commission report, which was tabled in the Lok Sabha on February 1st. After that, keeping in mind the upcoming prelims examination 2026, we'll discuss 5 important prelims pointers that will be highly useful for your prelims preparation. So, stay tuned. So let's start our discussion with the first topic, that is India-US deal 50% tariffs cut to 18%. And the context of this topic is that after months of negotiation, after wiping out huge amount from India's capital market, after significantly impacting the revenues, profit and growth of various companies who were exporting to United States, finally, the US President announced a deal with India that slashes US tariffs on Indian goods to 18% from currently 50%. And this topic is related to your GS paper 2, bilateral groupings and agreements, effect of policies and politics of countries on India's interest, as well as this topic is also related to your GS paper 3, effect of liberalization. Also, it is related to trade, growth and development, etc. So on his social media platform Truth Social, Mr. Donald Trump announced that US and India agreed to a new trade deal that will be effective immediately. Also, he spoke with the Honorable Prime Minister of India and praised him as a close friend and a strong leader. He also said that US will be reducing the reciprocal tariffs on India from 25% to 18%, and subsequently that was also posted by Honorable Prime Minister of India on his Twitter account. Now, in the first case itself, we should try to understand that why was there a need by the US to impose this tariffs at all. So if you look into this data of 2023-24, that says that India records trade deficit with 9 of the top trading partners. The only trading partner with which India was having a trade surplus was United States. In simple terms, we can understand that for the United States, we were exporting more and we were importing less from the United States. Be it the agricultural commodities, be it the textile, farmers, etc. US was one of the major markets for the Indian exporters. And that is the reason we were consistently having a trade surplus with the United States. This was the allegation of the United States that India is not opening its market for the US products. There are various tariff and non-tariff barriers that are imposed on the US products, because of which the US companies cannot access Indian markets effectively. Whereas, because of the competitiveness of Indian products, it was highly demanded in the United States market. And also, what we can understand that after the Russia-Ukraine war started, then the Russian crude oil was available at cheap prices. India's 85% of crude oil needs are being fulfilled by the imports itself. Majorly, we were dependent on the Middle East, Gulf countries. But when Russia was offering the crude oil at cheap prices, especially after sanctions were imposed on Russia, India also started buying Russian oil to ensure energy security for India, to ensure we can save our precious forex reserves that we use for the payments of the different imports. And that was again one of the allegations of the United States, that the countries who are buying the Russian oil, with the help of that, these countries are also funding the Russian or Russia-Ukraine war. Also, there were allegations from the United States that because of this money that the Russia is getting after the sale of the crude oil, they are able to sustain in that Russia-Ukraine war. So, because of this trade deficit that United States was having, the allegations that they were not able to access Indian markets, first of all, 25% tariff was announced on Indian products. Subsequently, there was an additional 25% tariff that was imposed on account of the Russian oil that we are buying from Russia. So effectively 50% tariffs were there in place. Now let's suppose there is a textile company which is exporting Indian shirt or Indian manufactured shirt to United States, and let's suppose the cost of that shirt is 1000 rupees. And earlier let's suppose 1000 rupees, and earlier let's suppose the tariffs was 10% or 20%, so effective cost will be around 1100 or 1200 rupees. But after this 50% tariff, the effective cost of this shirt will be around 1500 rupees. So the person who was buying the Indian shirts in the United States probably will be looking up to certain other alternatives of this shirt, because now this shirt became very costlier. And that is the reason the Indian competitors like China, Vietnam, etc., who are having the less cost of the production, whose products were better in the competition, they were getting the benefits and Indian products were becoming less competitive. And that is one of the reason some of the Indian companies whose main market was the United States, be it for the textile, pharma, etc., their revenues were significantly hit in last few years. So especially Indian exports in the sectors like smartphone, diamonds, pharmaceutical, machines, etc., these 50% tariffs has made them really uncompetitive. Also, these are the concerns that we have already highlighted, that a high Indian US goods trade deficit that were there. Also, India increased imports from the United States, especially after the 50% tariffs were announced, to bridge that trade deficit, with the help of which both the countries can come on the table. And trade gap that was earlier very high, that started narrowing. For example, India's trade surplus with the United States in the month of April 2025 was around $3.17 billion. But subsequently, India started opening its various sectors for the United States, with the help of which US companies were able to export their products to Indian market. And this India's trade surplus with the United States remained only $1.73 billion in the month of November 2025. Why? Because with the tariff restrictions that were in place, India's product became less competitive. So whatever the trade surplus that India was having in the early 2025, that halved nearly. Also, if you see the impact of the US tariffs on the trade flows that were on the different sectors. So 50% tariffs was imposed on 27th of August. And the immediate effect was the export decline. For example, the India's trade with the US, India's export to US, you can see that also declined. India's import from the United States, that increased to some extent. And US-India's trade balance also improved, and export to US as the percentage of the overall export, that was a little bit impacted, especially after the tariffs were announced. India's export to US in the month of August 2025 was $6.86 billion. In the month of October, it came down to $6.30 billion. India's import from United States in the month of August was $3.60 billion, and subsequently in October it increased to $4.84 billion. So exports are declining, imports are increasing, and that is one of the reasons whatever the trade surplus that India was having with the United States, that started narrowing down, that started squeezing. Also, if you see the sector-wise export impact, some of the sectors which were worst hit are the labor-intensive sectors like the garments, footwear, sports good, etc. Some other sectors like automobile, etc. were also hit. But subsequently in November, there was a rebound that was witnessed, especially after the GST 2.0 reforms, etc. were announced, that increased the export to 22%. The key driver was the electronics export. The reason was outside tariff net that was there. Also, when the additional tariffs of 25% was announced, then there was a stress for the proper negotiation. There was a compelling reason to finalize the trade deal as soon as possible. Issue was politically sensitive. Why? Because one of the major demand of the United States was that they wanted to access India's dairy sector, India's market with the cheap dairy products. They wanted to access India's market with the agricultural products. In India, agriculture contributes around 16% to GDP, and 46.1% is the employment generation from the agriculture sector as per Economic Survey 24-25. So if the cheap products from United States will flood the Indian markets for the agriculture sectors, so the agriculture sector, the people dependent on them, their livelihood will be jeopardized. Similarly, more than 5 crore people are dependent on dairy sector. Their livelihood will be jeopardized if the cheap US dairy products will come into the Indian markets. So that is the reason there was a constant delay in finalizing the trade deal. And that is one of the reason the trade deal was stalled, and India hit hardest with the 50% tariff level that was there. Contrast was that US reduced tariffs on China after some kind of truce that was witnessed. So to address this politically sensitive issues, India went with a multi-pronged strategy. First of all, they significantly reduced the Russian oil exports to India. For example, this is the data from the October 2025 that you can see consistently the Russian oil exports to India is declining. US share in 2024 for the oil import share was 4.43%. In 2025, it came to 7.48%. The Russia's share earlier was 37.88. Now it is around 32.18%. So we are reducing our oil imports from Russia, and significantly we are increasing from the United States, as well as we have also promised to buy the oil potentially from the Venezuela after Mr. Maduro was captured by the United States, and de facto United States is controlling the Russian oil, which is having the largest proven oil reserves. Also, that with the US sanctions on the Russian oil exports to India declined, and that is also visible from this particular data. Also, LPG and energy deals, that India is also diversifying their energy imports. They are not limited to only crude oils. For example, public sector undertakings refiners, they signed 1-year US LPG deal with the help of which they will be buying or they will be importing LPG. Also, the LPG imports significantly increased from the earlier years. Crude imports from United States is also significantly improving. This is near 10%. Also, the LPG is used for cooking fuel, etc. with the government schemes like Ujjwala Yojana, where they are providing free connections. There is further increase in the demand of the LPGs. So that major suppliers are Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Kuwait. US position is 5th largest crude oil supplier, 2nd largest LNG supplier. So that is the reason US is seeing a potential with the help of which they can also export these energy related components, and they can bridge their trade deficit. Okay. Also, India's nuclear sector reforms, because US obviously wanted to at least access some of the sectors. India was apprehensive in allowing in dairy and agriculture sector. So India went with several nuclear sector reforms. For example, India came with the Shanti Act that also provided for the opening up of the nuclear sector for the private sector. Now FDI is allowed. So this US push for the nuclear expansion and small reactors were there, and India's response was that it opened nuclear sector to FDI. And this Shanti Act which was passed, that was also welcomed by the United States. Also, India's response after the tariff was announced was the trade diversification strategy. For example, India accelerated various free trade agreements with the help of which the tariff and non-tariff barriers were significantly decreased with various countries. For example, India signed one of the largest trade deal in the world, that is India-EU free trade agreement trade deal with the European Union. India also finalized the free trade agreement with the UK. Also, there are various negotiations that were concluded with the New Zealand that are at the stage of the conclusion. And then there is a trade deal that was signed with Oman. Also, there are various ongoing talks with various groupings, for example, GCC or Gulf Cooperation Council, with which India is actively pursuing a comprehensive free trade agreement. And this GCC comprises UAE, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain. And with the FTA that we will be able to sign, we will significantly improve our economic ties, as well as this will significantly improve our market access to these countries. For example, India's trade with this countries was around $161 $0.59 billion in the financial year 23-24. So if we will be able to sign a trade deal, that will be significantly improving our situation. Also, there is this Russia-led EU, that is Eurasian Economic Union, which comprises Russia, Kazakhstan, Belarus, Armenia and Kyrgyzstan. If we will be able to sign with this group also, that will also significantly improve our market access. And with this, tomorrow if some kind of tariffs are again being imposed by some country, so our economy, our sectors will remain less impacted. So that is the way forward also, that we need to further diversify our markets, export markets. So we can focus on labor intensive exports and scale up in the industries like electronics. So when we will be focusing on better market accesses, our export will not be dependent on the domestic policies or the overall policies of any one country. Also, we need to focus on reducing the logistics and compliance costs. For example, in line of that, government went with GST 2.0 reforms, where they rationalized various GST slabs that are there. Now it is becoming much easier for the companies to comply with the GST. Then labor codes were announced, that also significantly improved the compliance with regard to the labor laws. India is also developing multi-modal logistics park. India has significantly improved the capital expenditure in this budget also, with the help of which we are going to significantly improve the overall infrastructure development, and that will help us in ensuring that the logistics cost, which is around 10 to 14% of our overall GDP, logistics cost as a percentage of GDP is around 14 to 18%, and some of the sources say it is around 8 to 10%. So it is significantly greater than the overall logistics cost as the percentage of GDP if we compare it with the developed countries. So when we will be reducing the logistics cost, it will make our products more competitive. Also, for energy and imports, we need to diversify crude, LNG and LPG sources. For example, African countries, we have started buying certain energy products from African countries. Like after the trade negotiations with Nigeria, we have started buying some of the oils from them also. Also, we need to accelerate renewables and green hydrogen to cut the import dependence. In that case, we will not have a dependency on the energy imports from the foreign markets if we will focus on the renewables and the green hydrogen. For example, there was a green hydrogen mission itself that was launched. Then for renewables, we are shifting to the solar, wind, etc. For example, PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana was launched. Also, industry and MSME, we need to have a stable quality control regime. If we want to ensure that our MSME products remain competitive, we need to make them aware about the quality measures that they need to follow significantly, about the different sanitary and phytosanitary measures that they need to follow. For example, India's MDH Everest masalas, they were sent back by European Union, Hong Kong and Singapore. Why? Because there was presence of ethylene oxide beyond a permissible limit. This component, ethylene oxide, is used in the pharma industry, and that is used to sterilize the various equipments that is used in pharma industry, and they are being used in the masalas or the spices to prevent the germination of worms. In India, they are selling anything, we are eating anything. But in the foreign markets, the quality related controls and norms are much more stringent. Until and unless a company will follow that, the countries will not allow the exports of the product. And whenever our consignments are sent back by the countries, that attracts a negative image. Our products became less competitive. That becomes less competitive. And that is the reason we need to ensure that there is a proper quality control regime which every company is following. Also, we need export-linked PLI support and predictable industry policy. There should be a coherence of policy. Policy should not be changing frequently, because that will make the companies understand that they can invest, as well as of now, the production-linked incentive scheme that is providing incentives to various companies is based on the incremental sales of the company. So some of the experts says that export can be also one of the criteria based on which the incentives can be provided to the companies, and that will motivate them to further export their products, and their products will also become much more competitive. Also, trade agreements and investment. We need to fast track and finalize different trade agreements that are at various stages with the various groupings. For example, Gulf Cooperation Council or EAEU. Along with that, China plus opportunity that is there. For example, when the China went with the zero COVID policy, when stringent lockdown and quarantine measures were in place, that's led to supply chain disruptions. The movement of products was significantly impacted. Some of the countries who are highly invested in the China, they went with this China plus opportunity where they wanted to diversify their investment in some other economies, in some other countries. Why? Because tomorrow, if again there will be a disruption that will be witnessed in the China, their investment doesn't remain jeopardized, their production and supply of the goods and services doesn't get impacted. So India has also one of the potential window that these countries who wants to invest in some other country under the China plus strategy, India can attract them with a coherent policy, with the easy regulations that are in place, with the policy coherence, and that will actually help us in making our products more competitive, and that will also help us in bringing the FDI. And also we have the institutions and strategy related measures. For example, strengthen trade negotiation, capacity and data driven monitoring of the companies, align trade with the foreign policy while preserving the strategic autonomy, that our trade and foreign policy should not be guided by any country or with the arm twist of any country. We should move from reactive trade management to strategic resilient integration. For example, this GST 2.0 reforms that were done or certain other measures that were taken in last few months, this could have been taken earlier also. But when we saw that US tariffs are significantly impacting, then we are reacting on that situation. Instead of that, there can be a consistent resilience policy that can be in place according to the need of the economy, according to the need of different sectors, and that can make our products more competitive, and that will also help us in realizing the vision of a developed country or Viksit Bharat by 2047. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this topic. Moving further to our next topic, that is 16th Finance Commission recommendations. The context of this topic is that the Finance Minister laid the 16th Finance Commission report in the Lok Sabha, and this is related to your GS paper 2, Center-State Relations, Indian Constitution, Cooperative Federalism as well as constitutional bodies. So this Finance Commission is constituted by the President of India under Article 280 of the Constitution, and that is the reason it is a constitutional body, every 5 years or earlier. And this Finance Commission, which is a multi-member body, submits its report to the President of India, who places it before both the houses of the Parliament. If you talk about the composition of this Finance Commission, it consists of a chairperson and 4 members, and all of them will be appointed by the President of India. The qualification to be appointed as the chairperson, it is that chairman should have expertise in the public affairs. For example, Mr. Arvind Pangadia was the chairman of the 16th Finance Commission. And the members can be any of the High Court judge or the person having an expertise and experience in finance and accounts, administration and economics. The tenure of these people, that they hold office as specified by the President. Also, they are eligible for the reappointment. The functions of this Finance Commission is that they advises the President on the tax distribution between the center and the state, the grants in aid to states that will be given under the Article 275. Also, the funds for the panchayats and the municipalities, the mechanism that will be followed to give these funds to the panchayats and the municipalities, or any other financial matters where they want to give the recommendations. So this 16th Finance Commission, the chairman was Dr. Arvind Pangaria. The report tabled was on 1st February 2026, and whatever the award or the recommendations that are given by the 16th Finance Commission, they will be applicable from the financial year 26-27 to 2030-31. If you talk about the recommendation, share of the states in the central taxes, this is 41% of the total divisible pool, and this is same as of the 15th Finance Commission, which also gave 41% to the states in the central taxes. Also, divisible pool, that means the gross tax revenue minus the cost of collection and the cesses and the surcharges, because there will be a cost that the government will be bearing for collecting that tax, the collecting that revenue and the taxes. Along with that, cesses and surcharges, they need not to be shared with the states. Cess is applicable for any particular work itself, for any particular fixed purpose itself, and that fund should be utilized for that intended purpose itself. For example, if there is 4% education and health cess, so that should be utilized for that purpose itself. Then surcharge is also there, which is applicable for high income earning individuals. So this cess and surcharge doesn't is not the component of our overall divisible pool. There is no need to share it with the states. The criteria for the tax devolution, it is a formula based approach, that is we assign different weights to multiple parameters, and accordingly we determine the state wise share in the central taxes. For example, here you can see in the 15th Finance Commission, the income distance was having the weightage of 45%. In the 16th Finance Commission, weight is reduced to 42.5%. The population of 2011, it was having 15% weightage in 15th Finance Commission, but its weightage was increased to 17.5% in 16th Finance Commission. The demographic performance, the family planning related measures that were taken in place and impact of that was 12.5% in 15th Finance Commission. It decreased to 10%. The area, the overall area of the state, it was having a weightage of 15% in the earlier Finance Commission. It has been reduced to 10%. Forest cover, that was having the same weightage in the 15th and is also having the same weightage in the 16th Finance Commission. Tax and fiscal efforts, they were having 2.5% weightage in 15th Finance Commission, which is now removed, and 10% weightage is given to contribution to GDP. Right. Also, this is one of the favorite areas of the UPSC from where they are asking questions in the prelims examination. Be it the 23 prelims examination, where they ask about the horizontal tax devolution and the criteria that was used by the 15th Finance Commission. Again in 2025, they are asking the same question. That is the reason we keep on recommending to you people that please take learnings from the previous year questions. Whatever the themes and topics that are already asked by the UPSC, please focus on that, please prepare that. There are chances that they will be asking questions from that. Don't run behind lot of content. Rather, take learnings from the previous year questions which has been asked. They will give you an idea what are the topics that you have to prepare, in what manner you have to prepare, and what is the information on which you have to focus on. Now, whatever these criteria are, for example, per capita GSDP distance, that is income distance, that is defined as the difference between a state's per capita GSDP and the average per capita GSDP of top 3 large states. The per capita GSDP average of 2018-19 to 2023-24 and 2020-20 was excluded. The lower per capita GSDP means higher share will be there to ensure that there is an equity objective. The states whose finances are not very well, they are also getting a greater support. Then the population, directly it is based on the population share as per the census 2011. Also, demographic performance, which was redefined by the 16th Finance Commission, that is now based on the population growth between 1971 to 2011, and this is replacing the TFR or the total fertility rate based approach that was used by the 15th Finance Commission. Also, lower population growth means there will be higher share that will be given to that state because they have taken lot of measures for the overall family planning. Then forest, which is having a weightage to share in the total forest area and share in increase in the forest area from 2015 to 2023. And it also includes the open forest areas. That means now this particular criteria is broader than the 15th Finance Commission, which was considering only the dense and moderately dense forest areas. Here open forests are also included. Also, contribution to GDP, which is the new parameter that is introduced by the 16th Finance Commission, and that is the reason some of the states whose finances are well, whose economy is performing well, they are getting a increased share in overall divisible pool. For example, Karnataka, Kerala, some of the southern states has significantly benefited from the new criteria. Also, this contribution to GDP, it replaces tax and fiscal parameters of the 15th Finance Commission. It is also calculated based on this particular formula, and we don't have to get into the technical details of this formula. GSDP is measured as average nominal GSDP from 2018-19 to 2023-24, excluding the figure of 2020-21. Then for grants in aid, what is the criteria that will be followed, especially for the local governments? So the total grants that are recommended is 9.47 lakh crore for the period of 26-27 to 2030-31. The components of grants for urban local bodies, rural local bodies, as well as for the disaster management are mentioned. For example, the grants that are discontinued, if you compare it with the 15th Finance Commission, the revenue deficit grants, sector specific grants, and the state specific grants, right? So here you can see the local governments, they will be getting around 7,91,493 crore rupees. Similarly, urban local bodies is getting around 3,56,257 crore, and disaster management related grants are around 1,55,916 crore rupees. If you see consistently, there has been an increase in the allocation to the local government across different Finance Commission recommendation. Why? Because government is again, as well as the Finance Commission, is trying to promote the grassroots democracy, as well as these are the bodies who understand the needs of the local population in a better manner. These are the bodies who will be helping in effective citizen-centric governance delivery, because they are most connected to the local population. So that is the reason you can see there has been increase in the overall allocations to the different local governments. Also, if you compare it with the rural local government grants and the urban local government grants, consistently, rural local government grants are increasing. It is 55% in 16th Finance Commission and 45% for the urban local government grants. That means that the Finance Commission is also focusing on the Panchayati Raj institutions, panchayats, etc. They are giving them more funds so that they can become more powerful. They have the fiscal autonomy, and with the help of which they can effectively deliver the overall services. Also, state-wise allocation to urban local government across Finance Commission. Here also some of the southern states like Kerala, Goa, Maharashtra, Gujarat, they has significantly gained. Also, the component-wise breakdown of the 16th Finance Commission's allocation to the urban local government. The basic grants that are tied to the sanitation, solid waste management and water management. The untied grants are especially that addresses the local needs, spending on road construction and maintenance, that is capped at 20%. Then there are performance grant, special infrastructure components, urbanization premium. So these are the areas on which these are the components on which the grants are linked. Then if you see the concerns over this revised devolution criteria, first of all, there are some of the states who are significantly at loss, especially the Madhya Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, etc. So lower weight to income distance, that is 42.5%, earlier it was 45%, that reduces the redistributive support to the poorer states. The states who are not performing well, states where population is high, where per capita GSDP is low, they are at the loss. Also, higher weight to population for the 2011 numbers give a disadvantage to the states who have already done the successful population control measures. Also, removal of tax and fiscal effort criteria, that weakens the incentives for the revenue constrained states. Then introduction of contribution to GDP, that was 10%, that favors the economically advanced states like Karnataka, Gujarat, and states like Maharashtra, etc. And some of the states whose economy is not performing well, some of the northeastern states, they are at the loss with this particular criteria. And that will further reinforce the regional disparities that will be there in place. Some of the states where already they were battling with the poor economic health, their finances will be further impacted. Also, reduced weight to demographic performance, that dilutes the rewards for the social sector achievements. So here again, the particular states who are taking various measures to control their overall growth of the population or the TFR, etc., they will also be disincentivized, because Now TFR is not one of the component. More than that, demographic performance means the overall improvement in the education, health indicators, skilling, etc., that were earlier taken into account, that is not there in place. So that will be diluting the rewards or the incentives that states were getting for the social sector improvements, like reduction in poverty, increasing employment, increasing skilling, improving education and health indicators. Now, what is the path ahead? What is the way forward? First of all, there can be sector specific grants that can be given, especially for the social sectors, like improvement for health, education, employment, skilling, etc., so that the states are not disincentivized for their overall performance and overall efforts in the social sector initiatives. Then state specific grants can be there, especially for the states whose the economic health is not good, to address the regional disparities that we may witness in future. Also, revenue deficit grants that can be given to ensure there is a fiscal equalization is there, so that to promote the equity principle. Also, outcome linked conditional grants can be there that can help in that is human development indicators, that some of the states who are improving their human development indicators, whose skilling is improving, whose unemployment rate is decreasing, the states where the female labor force participation rate is increasing, some of these states can get better support from the finance commission or from the government. Also, performance grants, although these recommendations are already accepted by the government. So as of now, what the government can do, that if some issues are being highlighted by the states, so they can go with the support in the form of these measures. Also, performance grants within the framework with regard to the improvement in the governance, citizen-centric service delivery, etc. That is also some of the indicators that government can take into account for the grants that should be given. Also, one of the major concern with the Finance Commission as of now is that their role is advisory in nature. There is no mandatory provision that government should accept whatever the recommendation or the award that they are giving. Also, capacity building of the states, that they can be made self-sufficient in improving their finances. Also, tax administration, own revenue of the states, government should support them so that their tax collection should increase, their tax expenditure should reduce, with the help of which they will slowly and gradually become less dependent on the devolution of funds. Also, periodic mid-term review that can be also done to ensure that if there is interstate divergence, in that case all that can be rectified in a time-bound manner. Also, cooperative federalism mechanisms like GST Council, which is provided under Article 279A of the Constitution, Interstate Council, which is provided under Article 263 of the Constitution. So, these are the mechanisms that can be used to actually address whatever the concerns are there of the state governments. Also, GST Council, which is a joint forum for the center and state, and it decides all the matters related to the GST. It will function under the chairmanship of the Union Finance Minister, and it will have ministers nominated by the states and UTs as a member. The council will also act as a benchmark and will guide the states and union on the issues like tax rates, exemptions, list and threshold limits. The central government shall have a weightage of 1/3 of the total votes that will be cast, and 2/3 voting power will be given to the states, and the votes of all the states will comprise together 2/3, and any of the decision to be passed will require 3/4 of majority. This is a mains practice question that you people can write from this particular topic. Moving towards our next section, that we have introduced considering your needs of the prelims examination 2026. So under this prelims pointers section, our first topic is why are tribals protesting in Maharashtra, which is related to your GS paper 2, executive fundamental rights, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 10. So the story so far is that there are different demands which are being made by the different tribals, and that is one of the reasons they are protesting. Their demands are related to the education, employment opportunities, land rights, etc. For example, there are demands that as per the provisions of Forest Rights Act 2006, the forest land which they are tilling from generations should be made in their name. Also, there are various educational opportunities which are provided to the tribal people under the Panchayats Extension to Scheduled Areas Act 1996. So this should be given to the educated tribal youths. Along with that, the data which was accessed by the Hindu, they said that the 45% of claims under the Forest Rights Act have been rejected so far. There are various other demands, for example, related to irrigation and agriculture, that these groups are demanding that MSP for crops beyond paddy should be there. For example, corn, soybean, onion, millets and fruits, they should also be included in MSP. Also, filling vacant teacher and staff posts in Zilla Parishad schools, better educational access and 24 into electricity. These are the overall cumulative demands. Now, what is the Forest Rights Act 2006? This was enacted to recognize the forest and land rights of the scheduled tribes and other traditional forest dwellers who are dependent on the forest and forest lands. The main aim was to correct the historical injustice that was done against them. It will integrate the livelihood security with the forest conservation, and formally it was called as Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Rights Act 2006. Also, need for the Forest Rights Act was there because tribals were historically dependent on the forest for food, shelter, livelihood, employment, etc. And colonial forest laws severed that tribal forest relationships. It became a criminal whenever without the permission the forest resources will be used by these primitive people or tribal people. So post independence there was a continued focus on this exclusionary forest governance, that tribals were not being given their rights on account of being dependent on the forests. So non-recognition was there for the customary or the ancestral rights that were there. Land rights were not being given to them even when they are consistently tilling them for years. Or displacement was being witnessed due to the development and conservation projects that were there. For example, hydroelectric projects or the mining projects, etc. that were there. So the main aim was to strengthen the Gram Sabha based local self-governance, ensure livelihood security and poverty alleviation, promote the community-led forest conservation and management. The different provisions under this was that recognition of individual and community forest rights. For example, there are land rights that are given, ownership of land cultivation prior to 13 December 2005. No documentary proof is required. Maximum 4 hectares is capped per family. Only that will be used for the self-cultivation purpose. It can't be given under contracts, etc. Then there will be use rights, for example, collection and disposal of minor forest produce that includes tendu leaves, bamboo herbs, medicinal plants, etc. That specifically excludes the timber, right? So these minor forest produce, when that will be utilized by the primitive and tribal people, they can earn significantly and they can sustain their life easily. Also, access to grazing grounds and water bodies, rights over the traditional use areas of pastoralist and nomadic communities. Also, these are the different provisions under which these rights are given. Also, there are mandatory Gram Sabha recommendations for the diversion of the forest land for the public utilities like schools or the PDS shops, water tanks, power lines. Provisions for conversion of forest village into revenue villages. Okay? So, these is the mechanism under which the claims will be processed. Right, Gram Sabha, then SDLC and DLC will be there. SDLC is Subdivisional Level Committee. It examines and verifies the claims which are submitted by the Forest Rights Committee of the Gram Sabha. They also consolidates the maps and records of the forest rights, and it is headed by a subdivisional officer. Then you have the district level committee, which is headed by the district collector with the divisional forest officer, district panchayat members and district level tribal welfare officers who are part of this. And they examines the claim that are forwarded by the SDLC, and they also approves the claims and they also provides the formal titles to the people. Then there are different other rights which are provided under FRA. For example, there are community rights that are given to these primitive people to protect, manage and conserve the forest. Also, they also provides authority to protect wildlife and biodiversity. There is shift from exclusionary to participatory conservation, that we are taking participation of these tribal people, primitive people whose lives are going to be impacted after the decisions that is being made by the government. Also, there is a protection from eviction that is also provided to them. No arbitrary displacement from national parks and protected areas. Displacement only after due process and safeguards are taken into account. Also, this is the PISA Act of 1996, which is also mentioned in the article. So here there are Gram Sabha that approves the plans, programs and projects for the social and economic development. Gram Sabha is a permanent body and it consists of all the eligible voters, of all the adult voters. They are part of the Gram Sabha. You people tell me the difference between Gram Sabha and Gram Panchayat in the comment box. Also, Gram Sabha is competent to safeguard and preserve the traditions, customs and cultural identity of the people. Also, it identifies the beneficiaries for the developmental schemes that are being made by the government. They are also endowed with the ownership of minor forest produce like tendu leaves, etc. They also give the approval of utilization certificates by the Gram Sabha that it is being utilized for the intended purposes. Also, reservation of seats are there for the scheduled tribes in the panchayats in these regions. Also, the Gram Sabha or Panchayat at the appropriate level is consulted for land acquisition, management of minor water bodies, grant of licenses or mining leases in these areas, prohibition or regulation of tribal land, management of village markets and other local resources. Moving towards our next topic, that is adaptive testing, which is related to your GS paper 3 IT and computers, and this is also related to your GS paper 2 education, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu page number 10. For the UPSC civil services examination, be it the prelims examination or the mains examination, all of you are tested based on the same paper. Okay? Whether it is the prelims examination or the mains examination, all of the persons who are giving this examination get the same paper, and that is the traditional linear test, that everyone is getting the same paper, and based on the response, based on the answers that the students will be writing in the mains examination, the performance will be judged. But sometimes this makes life stressful for some of the students who do not come from a very good background, who didn't have a very good educational backgrounds, or whose capabilities or the IQ level is not very high, especially for the test like JEE, etc. So that is the reason there is a recommendation that we can introduce the adaptive testing. What is this adaptive testing? This is a dynamic computer-based assessment using the item response theory. Different questions will be drawn for the different candidates based on an already chosen question bank. So here this computerized adaptive testing or CAT will select the next item based on the person's response. For example, there will be a medium difficulty level question that will be asked as the first question, and now whatever the response will be of the person, if the person responds positively or he or she has marked that question correctly, then subsequently the next question will be more difficult, and then it will continue till the test ends. And if the person responds negatively or he or she has marked that question incorrectly, the subsequent questions will be easier. Also, after each response, the system will re-estimate the ability of the person. The test ends with the ability, precision or syllabus coverage criteria when they are met. Also, fewer but better targeted questions, yet scores remains same on a common scale. Also, why adaptive over linear test? Because this will move the focus from test cracking into conceptual understanding, that what is the level of understanding of that person. Also, it is built in fairness. For example, higher ability students access higher weight questions, greater precision with fewer items. Also, it is used globally for the 25 plus years across different exams like GMAT, etc. But there are certain legal and practical challenges in India. For example, Article 14, which talks about the equality before law. There are concerns that courts or the judiciary can say it violates the Article 14. Why? Because different students are getting different questions. So on what basis we can judge that everyone is getting the same marks? Also, different question sets may be challenged. Risk from algorithmic opacity and non-transparent normalization, because at the end normalization will be there. And time and again it has been debated that it benefits some of the sections and it negatively impacts some of the persons. Also, trust deficit, explaining why fewer hard question can outscore many easy ones. So there can be a lot of controversy, lot of debates regarding the level of questions that are being asked. Also, infrastructure risk are there, especially in tier 3 cities, smaller cities. For different exams like SSC, CGL, etc., there has been various instances where students find it difficult in those centers that the computers are working properly, network issues are there. So in that case, when further these kind of adaptive testing will be introduced, that will further over stress or overburden the already infrastructure that are there in place. Also need robust documentation, grievance redressal, proctoring and incident handling to address the apprehensions of the people. How we can ease this transition? We can build large calibrated item banks with strict syllabus coverage. There can be pre-test items securely to avoid the leakages. Also, we can ensure algorithmic transparency, disclosures and equity audits. We can go for phased rollout with the extensive mock testing to familiarize the candidates. And also, we can prepare the testing agencies for the scientific and the legal defense whenever this will be in the courts, and accordingly the defense can give all the arguments in support of this adaptive testing. Our next topic is bond price and bond yield. This is related to your GS paper 3 capital market, and this has appeared in today's The Indian Express page number 30. So what is the meaning of the bond yield? This is the return an investor receives from a bond. Let's suppose, what is this? This is a bond. So bond is a debt instrument. Let's suppose there is a company XYZ Limited and they are in need of funds. So there are various options that are available in front of this company. Either they can go with the debt instruments, like they can issue a bond, or they can also go with the equity route, where they can dilute their ownership or stakes in the company that they were holding. Earlier, 100% ownership was with few individuals and they are called as the promoters of the company, or any one person was holding the complete ownership in that company. And if company is of view that they can dilute or they can share, they can sell some of their stakes in the company, they can go with their equity route, or they can issue the bonds, which will be a debt instrument. And it will be the liability of the company to pay back whatever the interest or the coupon that is being offered by this bond, as well as after the maturity period, whatever the amount that was invested for the bond, that should also be given back. So bond is simply this particular instrument or piece of paper consisting all the details related to that bond. It will have the name of the issuer of that bond, the bond price or the face value of the bond, and then it will also give a detail about the coupon rate or the interest that this bond will be offering. Along with that, other details like maturity period, etc. will also be mentioned on that bond itself. Now the question is, what is the bond? What is bond yield? So let's suppose this is the case 1. At this point of time, market interest rate is 8% and this is the month of January 2024. Market interest rate, simply at this point of time we can understand that this is the rate which is being offered by the banks or other entities if we want to invest our money with them at this point of time. Then there was a bond that was issued by this company XYZ Limited, right? And this bond is offering 10% yearly payment. So the person, let's suppose there is a person A or ABC, this person ABC, who is investing in this particular bond. Now why this person ABC is interested in investing in this bond is because of the fact that this bond is giving greater return, 10%, as compared to whatever market interest rate is there. But let's suppose subsequently in the month of April 2024, because of the various dynamics that changed in the economy, because of various changes that happened in the economy, the market interest rate rose to 12%. Now one of the major feature is that here the interest will be fixed. So this person ABC who bought this bond at 100 rupees is his interest is fixed at 10%. Now he is thinking that if he hasn't bought this bond or he hasn't invested in this particular bond, he could have invested in the market and he could have got 12% return. So now he want to sell this bond or he want to get rid of this bond. And he called 4 of his friends A, B, C, D ki please take this bond from me. But none of them are interested in buying that bond at 100 rupees, which will be offering only 10% return. Instead, they are saying that, see, you are our friend, so we can buy this bond, but we will quote a lower price. So all of these 4 friends started quoting a lower price, 70 rupees, 75 rupees, 78 rupees, 80 rupees. The maximum price which was quoted by a person was D, who quoted 80 rupees as the price of the bond. Now let's suppose ABC just want to get rid of this bond and he is ready to sell this bond at 80 rupees. That is the price that D is investing. And here at the investment of 100 rupees, 10% was the promised interest or the coupon rate. That means 10 rupee is the return that is being promised when the bond was issued. So at the investment of 80 rupees by D, he is going to get 10 rupee interest payment or the coupon rate, which was fixed at the time of issuance itself. So 10 by 80 into 100, if we will calculate this, it will come at 12.5%. So this effective interest rate came to 12.5%, and that we have got after dividing this 10 by 80, after calculating this 10 by 80 into 100 to get an idea about the percentage. This is 12.5%. This effective interest rate is called as the bond yield. Now one question that may come in your mind, that why this ABC who was holding this bond is willing to sell, or why he is so much adamant to sell this bond. It is because of the fact that ABC thinks that in future the market interest rate will further go to 14-15% and no one will be even willing to buy that at 80 rupees. D is of view that in future the market interest rate will further come down to 10, 9, 8% or 7%. Still this bond will be giving 12.5% return to this person D. So either of them can be wrong, but both of them are buying and selling this bond based on the future speculations. So here, if we can see that there is less demand of the bond and that will quote a lower price for bond, so that will increase the effective interest rate or the bond yield on that bond. If there is more supply of the bonds, in that case also there will be less price that will be quoted for the bond and the effective interest rate or the bond yield will increase. For example, here also when record borrowing plans are there, that means more bonds will be issued. That means more supply of bonds, then there will be a lower price for the bonds. And when lower price, that means effective rate of return or bond yield will increase. That is what they are saying, that benchmark 10-year bond yield rise on the record borrowing plan. If the opposite is there, if there is less supply of the bonds and there is more demand of the bonds, in that case there will be a greater price that will be quoted for the bonds. And in that case effective interest rate will come down. For example, if someone is buying this bond at 110 rupees and still they are getting the same interest rate or the coupon rate 10 rupees, so effective interest rate or bond yield will come down to 9%. Also here, if the market interest rate is coming down, in that case this person will be willing to buy this bond at a greater price. So what we are witnessing, that there is an inverse relation between bond price and bond yield. When bond price was 100 rupees, bond yield was 10%. When bond price came to 80 rupees, the bond yield increased to 12.5%. So there is an inverse relation between bond price and bond yield. Also, when the market interest rate was 8%, bond yield was 10%. When market interest rate rose to 12%, the bond yield increased to 12.5%. So there is a direct relation between market interest rate as well as bond yield. There is an inverse relation between bond price and bond yield. Also, yield of the bond will fall whenever the quality of the bond will rise. There will be less risk aversion. There will be less risk of the default of that bond, and demand of the bond will increase, and that will drive the prices up of that bond. So greater the price, less the effective rate of return or yield. Also yield will rise when the quality of the bond will fall, when the risk aversion rises or the risk of the default and on that bond rises. Also demand will fall, and which will drive down the prices of the bonds. And ultimately when the prices of bonds are coming to the lower level, the effective rate of return is increasing on that bond. Next topic is funding framework essential to ensure UPI payments a free service. This is related to your GS paper 3, growth and development, inclusive growth, IT and computers, infrastructure. And this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 15. So as of now, as you would be aware of the fact that one of the major operated systems of the NPCI is Unified Payment Interface or UPI, that is free of cost, whatever the transactions that we are doing. So there are some people who are of view that we can't keep it free consistently without a proper funding, because we have to maintain that payment system infrastructure to ensure that there is less risk associated with the cyber security. We can further improve overall quality of service. Now this is what has been consistently said in the article. So UPI is the real-time digital payment system that is developed by the NPCI, and under this we can link multiple bank accounts in one app itself, and also it is interoperable. We can send money with the help of UPI from the one of the UPI apps to other UPI apps, the person who is using any other UPI apps. We can send the money from any one bank account, any one UPI linked bank account to any other UPI linked bank account. And here we can send and collect via the virtual payment address or VPA. Earlier, to send or receive money, there was need of bank account details, IFSC code, etc. But now with the help of this VPA or virtual payment address itself, for example, it can be xyz@UPI, xyz@YBL. With the help of that itself, we can send or receive money. Also, there is two-factor authentication that is used, UPI pin, etc. are there. Then it helps in instant transfer. It also, this Aadhaar, that helps in the verification, biometric authentication of the people. That is also one of the important backbone of the UPI. Also, there are more than 2 to 8 plus billion transactions that happened in 2025. 300 plus lakh crore annual value is of the transaction. Also, consistently the number of transactions and banks on the UPI ecosystem that has significantly improved. This is world's largest real-time system. 50% of global retail payments are under UPI. 85% of India's digital payments are being done by the UPI itself. It is one of the 24/7 instant payment services that provides the ease and convenience to the people. Also, security is available, QR code merchant payments, etc. are also available. If you see the list of countries where UPI is accepted, it is Bhutan, France, Mauritius, Nepal, Singapore, Sri Lanka, UAE. Latest entrant is Qatar. And this was the question that was asked in prelims 2025, that how many countries amongst the above are there other than India where international merchant payments are accepted under UPI. You people tell me the answer of this question in the comment box. Our next topic is Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau or AAIB, which is related to your GS paper 3 infrastructure, and this has appeared in today's Indian Express page number 6. So the context is this Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau has probed 19 accident and serious incidents that happened in last 1 year in the country, and this was said by the Minister of State for the Civil Aviation. So it is India's independent civil aviation accident investigation authority. It was established in 2012 and it functions under the Ministry of Civil Aviation. It was created to ensure functional independence from regulators like Directorate General of Civil Aviation or DGCA. It is aligned with the International Civil Aviation Organization standards. Aircraft Act of 1934, Section 7 of this act empowers government to frame the accident investigation rule. So this provides some of the legal backing to this Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau. Also, earlier investigations were handled by DGCA under the Aircraft Rules 1937 as well as under the Article 26 of Chicago Convention. Then if there are various governing rules for this. For example, Aircraft's Investigation of Accidents and Incidents Rules 2012. This was amended in 2017 and 2021. Also, it is designated as an attached office of Ministry of Civil Aviation. The jurisdiction of this Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau is, it investigates all accidents and serious incidents involving aircrafts having more than 2250 kg of all-up weight and turbojet aircraft. They also may investigate other cases if directed by the government. The core functions that they classifies occurrences into accidents, serious accidents, incidents. They also enjoys immediate and unrestricted access to evidence from any of the agencies from which they can take help for the investigation of the accidents. Also, no prior judicial or government approval that is required to them. This is all from today's Analyst. Thank you very much. All the very best. Keep studying.